Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's June 1st, 2018, and today's video is covering modifying the margins of your garden plots. So the garden plot is the number of permanent raised beds that I have in these beds, and we have different types of gardening beds, but in this case, the one behind me here that I'm using as an example, these are permanent raised beds that have an unusual design because we put these beds in after the property was developed over time. Hi, sunshine. And so typically, I guess one thing I should say is if I were to start over anew with laying out garden plots or a series of garden permanent raised beds, I would keep them all the same length and create either rectangles or squares, garden plots with multiple long, going with the slope, permanent raised beds that all have a uniform shape and size, so that the weed mats are easy to use, the irrigation system's easier to manage as well. But as I said, switching to becoming much more elaborate with our gardening or small market gardening system that we've designed, it was, this is our third generation in life, so to speak, on the property, so it wasn't one of my initial intentions. But anyways, back to today's topic is controlling, trying to modify the margins around the garden system, the garden plot. So one of the reasons for doing that is because of weed migration into the garden systems. Now, certainly the animals will bring in weeds, the wind will bring in weed seeds, and those are all things. Even when I'm snow blowing during the winter time, I'm chopping up chunks of sod and all, and that's getting propelled through the air and can land on the garden plots. And then the wind blowing the tarps off, all of those things that happen to us here. But over time, as we're using the wood chips or using the compost, whatever the materials are, the wood chips start breaking down, creating more soil, and the weeds from outside of the system that we're really not managing start to creep their way in, and this includes grass as well, because I consider that a weed in a garden system, especially those quack grass or Bermuda grass, so we want to control those things. So one of the things I've learned to do over time, it's sort of like one of the rules for controlling weeds is never let the weed go to seed. If you can't pull the weeds out, at least cut them off or hurt them to the point where they can't go to seed, because then you have the multiple effect. Exponential growth as a result of not getting that weed before it goes to seed. So with that same way of thinking, controlling the margins is also important. And so there's sod and there's weeds that make their way along the margins and ultimately into the garden bed itself. And that has to go with the flow, the flow of the water, the flow of the air, all of those things. So behind me, I'm going to just turn the camera around, bear with me. So all along in here, along the drive through here, grass and weeds, quack grass and Bermuda grass, ryegrass, dandelion, plantain, all sorts of different weeds were growing along in here. And the sod gradually got built up because the water would flow down the driveway here. Now we have one path that I've already talked about before that we cut in, and we control the water going along this area here, going by Bumblebee over there, down into Pond 3, the bioremediation canal system. But since this driveway has a small crown to it, some of the water goes towards this edge, works its way around, and gradually sediment would build up, and we got all the weed development, and it got deeper and deeper in here. And you'll notice that this is all in the GoPro footage. You'll see that this whole area has changed a lot because I dug out all of the sod and grass in there. And so I used the excavator to dig out the area all right up to the building and removed all that. Now I'm using all that material over in a shade garden that I'm building, but quite a few buckets, I don't know, probably 10 I'm guessing 10 or 12 bucket loads in Optimus Prime, the front end loader I took out of there. So once removing all that material and getting down to the gravel, removing the sod in a sense, then I came back in and repiled up the old wood chips, which was breaking down nicely, and then topped off the wood chips with multiple loads of wood chips around here. And of course, rebuilding the wood chips at this lower end. So the property slopes in this direction, but the way I've controlled it is I've made it go directly south here. So these small pathways that are in between the permanent raised beds, during the winter months I'll get more water collecting in all of them, where last winter I lost some of the tarps because of the high winds coming. But one of the things I do is I build up these ends during the springtime and in the fall, so that that stops the flow of water going down the slope and draining out of these pathways. And it helps to filter, so let's say any of the organic material that's going through the permanent raised beds, through the mats and all that wants to work its way out, gets entrapped in the wood chips here before it goes into the pond system. And this material, again, in a few years' time will be dug out and used in other garden beds. So I hope that makes sense, what I've just described. So the tool that I use, we're going to go over here to Bumblebee. That bucket has 4 nice teeth in it that are probably 4.5 inches long. I'm not sure exactly how long they are, I haven't checked. And I use that to tear the sod away from, including all of the root mass and just about all the material there. There might be some quackgrass roots, or if there were bindweed in there, there would be roots that would go deeper. But that's what I used all along over there, digging out that whole area around the garden plot. So I hope my explanation made sense. Using Bumblebee, the mini excavator with the teeth on the bucket, I can gradually rip away the superficial sod, the plants that are all integrated like in a nice mat, like you're using a sod cutter to take out a lawn. I can use this to do it, and it really doesn't dig down into the gravel that was put there for the driveway years ago. Sort of like gives us a new clean, I don't know, manicure or whatever. But sculpting that material away and using it in a different location, it'll break down because it's being buried and work out just fine. So I guess my point is, there are multiple means of controlling weeds in your garden, and that's one of the things as a beginning gardener that can be so frustrating, is you spend all this time either buying transplants that you're going to put into the ground or starting your own seeds, prepping the garden beds and all, and then to watch all these weeds come up, or over time, if you go away for a week on vacation, I'm sorry for all the sweating, it can be so darn frustrating. And so this is just one way of thinking about it. Now I'm using the mini excavator. You could use any variety of tools, but thinking about the margins before you actually get everything set. That deep mulch of the wood chips, it makes it very hard for weed seeds to really get a good foothold because it's so deep, those wood chips are. And at the same time, they're going to break down over time and create beautiful soil. Now, will there be some weeds that start up in there? Yes. In 2 years' time, there'll be a little bit in there, but I really won't have to do a major transition like this for at least 3 or 4 years, probably about 6 years. So what's going to follow is some of the GoPro footage of me doing the work over time, maybe me bringing in the wood chips, and then using the Premier One fencing. If you'd like, I'll make a video about my experiences with Premier One fencing. I know it's a big hit in permaculture and agroforestry channels and all. Many people absolutely love it. It doesn't work that great on this particular property, and I can go into detail if you have questions, but since I invested in so much of it, I still use it. So if this was of value, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to, hit the bell icon so you get notified when I post another video. And by all means, ask questions, leave comments. I'll get to creating a video to answer all of your questions and comments, respond to them as soon as I get a chance. Thanks so much for watching, folks. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.